Feels like a long time ago, Atlas, but they started the season without Zhao, who has really evolved into by far their most impressive performer. So they had a slow start. They got it going towards the end, a bit like Starhorn Royal Club with Name. They still haven't managed to gel completely, but you'd still take them over SPL team in theory. And we'll just see what they can show us in their 3 series this weekend.
Well, that's true. I mean, now is the time to really bring out all of the strats you've got. I mean, LGD probably holding things a bit close to their chest for playoffs. They're looking like a definite shoe-in there, most definitely. They're just playing for the seeding here, trying to get into the right position, possibly even avoiding that EDG matchup that you definitely don't want to be going into because they are looking absolutely unstoppable. But now sort of probably looking to try out something new, maybe create some bans for themselves that they don't necessarily worry about so that enemy teams are going to be looking at them saying, we need to ban this way when really they don't mind.
And that's kind of the crazy thing about these stages where you've already qualified for playoffs. You're already in the knockout stages. You already have a chance of becoming the LPL Spring 2015 champions. But you want to create those seeds of doubt. You want to play those champions. And you have to really analyze whenever a team picks something. Are they trying to show something they want banned? For example, when we saw Deft not play Kalista for a whole split, then play 2 straight games of Kalista, you're like, all right, EDG want to start drawing Kalista bans, because hell, it seems like every other team was banning the Kalista, but they were leaving it up against EDG. You start sowing those seeds of discontent. You show that Deft, of course, he can play a champion like Kalista, and you have to wait and see.
There's not many champions he can't play.
Exactly. Well, it seems to be ranged carries, but I'm sure he could throw in a couple of melee champions there if he really needed to. His Twitch jungle, of course, was legendary in an OGN All-Star game. But we'll see. We expect experimentation, but also there's always the possibility that you experiment and find out, hey, maybe this champion actually is viable.
Yeah,
Probably not going to see the Ashe in playoffs necessarily.
Oh, I don't know. Imp was pretty impressive on that Ashe.
Level 18, 6-item Ashe, pretty strong.
Yep. Yeah, most definitely. Still massive menace there in the late game. Diana going to be the final ban here for Gamtee, who have taken away Urgot and Sejuani as well. Nautilus, Azir, and Rek'Sai hitting the bench for LGD. Pretty standard for 5.6, but of course not standard any other time in League of Legends thus far.
It's a wonderful time to be alive and seeing that all the viable champions coming through. And there's another pick that hasn't seen too much play yet in the LPL is the Gragas. We're expecting him in the jungle. Definitely coming through many regions, building very tanky. It's not the AP Gragas from the jungle. Definitely going for Locket, CDR, and health items, and just trying to be a frontline disruptor. There's been such a priority on disengage in the LPL. Janna's a must-pick. Nami's thrown in there when Janna's not available. You've basically got a ranged Monsoon with that explosive cask. You're not looking for the burst damage. It's not the 1-to-1 AB burst days for Gragas, but the disengage still very relevant.
Most certainly is. And I mean, it's a lot like having an AoE Dragon's Rage kick from Lee Sin as well, that you don't need to do too many buttons in order to get into the right place. So definitely like it. TBQ, of course, hasn't picked that one up yet. But, of course, if he's been watching the games that Rookie has been playing, he definitely knows exactly what's up. Let me hovering over the tree here, as well as Huey looking to possibly hop back on the Nunu.
And the Nunu would actually be something a little bit different. They showed the Lulu, because Lulu come through, still very strong as the Juggernaut comp if you want to run it. I think GT have struggled with that comp. They've tried it a few times. Hasn't necessarily fit them, and they're leaving themselves with the opportunity. You've got a very early power spiking Maokai as your first pick, so of course, the Juggernaut, often we do see the Maokai in the top lane for just the low item threshold for being tanky and being relevant for a Kog'Maw power spike, the 1-item power spike from Kog'Maw into the grouping from, say, a Catalyst, Glacial Shroud, Maokai. So a lot of flexibility with the first 2 picks, and you don't necessarily give anything away.
No. LGD now looking for a Janna, which is making me a little bit upset, of course, meaning that there's probably not going to be too much Bard this game, but haven't actually locked it in yet, and we'll see exactly what does come through. Acorn, his signature rumble there being hovered, but switching over now, having a think to see what LGD are going to do. And looks like a very standard comp thus far.
You say it's standard, I don't disagree, but the rumble, which is last-second change, doesn't have a lot of synergy with Gragas and Janna. Both of them about displacement, most of them about splitting up enemy members.
Triple displacement right now.
I prefer triple displacement than an AoE ultimate that literally had negative synergy with the teammates that were hovered. We all know how wonderful a Rumble player Acorn is, but a bridge too far just picking it when it didn't fit the comp. The Hecarim is the last-second lock-in. I think Hecarim fits it a bit more, obviously, and then Hecarim versus Maokai. We've seen this matchup so often. It should be a farm lane for the Hecarim.
It should be, and man, teamfights are going to look absolutely terrifying here for Gamtee, because one of their members could find themselves, you know, maybe in the fountain of LGD from the mid lane. It will be terrifying.
And I must say, I do not like the adaptation of going for what looks like a Protect the Jinx comp against 3 displacements. These comps thrive on exact positioning. And between the explosive cast, the Terrify from the onslaught of shadows, and just Janna potentially getting into the backline with a Monsoon, positioning is going to be at a complete premium against what is at the moment a Protect the Jinx comp. Jinx, Kog'Maw, both of them are hyper carries that scale excellently into the late game. I don't know about this draft from Gamtee so far, and I don't know if a last pick can really kind of put it back on course.
And does Gamtee sort of rely on making sure that this Hecarim does not get too big in the later stages of the game? Because you have to think, with that Onslaught of Shadows, he can just jump onto the Jinx, and without a Morgana yet being picked up, maybe it'll be coming through for the last pick here for Gamtee, then Tail's just going to get slaughtered.
And the kind of the unique thing about Hecarim compared to other top laners like Maokai, for example, is the burst damage from the Trinity Force Devastating Charge. So it's very hard to peel off a Hecarim, especially through the Onslaught of Shadows into that Trinity Force proc, then maybe even the Devastating Charge as well. You can only do so much peeling as this team, and they don't have the Janna on this team necessarily to have the peel god. No Morgana selected just yet. Almost feels like you need to throw in Morgana somewhere at this point. I guess support will be the obvious role, just to have another option in terms of disengage, because only a single magic damage lineup. They're considering between the support options. I'd go for the Morgana just because if you avoid the explosive cask and respect the ball position, that you should actually be pretty safe. You might actually keep that Black Shield up for the full duration, but they're going to go with Thresh. High-risk comp to run against all this displacement.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they're going massive amounts of displacement and then throwing a Shockwave in there. It could make these team fights a little bit interesting with explosive casts going off and then there being a hula hoop sort of in the middle of where those enemy teams are.
Hecarim with an Onslaught of Shadows, Trinity Force proc, Devastating Charge into a Shockwave, that's a dead Jinx.
That's a dead everyone, you have to think. It's going to be absolutely terrifying. And we've seen Wayless on this Orianna as well. It was one of his most impressive champions thus far in the LPL.
And we're seeing some LCK flavor in terms of the summoners. Of course, Flandre started it off with the Teleport Smite coming through from the Shyvana, but it was in the LCK someday from KT Rolster actually went for the Teleport Smite. Hecarim did wonderful work, much the same idea as the Shyvana, with just a little bit less wave clear. Of course, requires more of those rampage stacks, a little bit slower in the jungle follow, but you can do devastating things with that Teleport Smite Hecarim.
Yeah, and that was a devastating pun there as well, Papa Smithy. We're going down the lineups here, and Imp taking the Kalista into Jinx here. Definitely not exactly going to have the range advantage there, but Imp has shown terrifying potential on that champion thus far. PYL and his very comfortable Janna into that Thresh here from Sync Dream. A more standard support from him, but you still have roam potential early on, so I do like that pickup. And seems like a lot of the Gamtee cards are going to be on Tail this game.
Absolutely. It's all going to be about Tail. I mean, LGD, not necessarily all about Imp, but so much defensive peel available for Imp. If he gets big, whichever AD carry goes off has so much support, and the difference only comes in the backline live. You always want to give the advantage to the Hecarim.
Yeah, and we'll see whether that's going to be peel coming through from Let Me here as well. I mean, Twisted Advance is a decent way to get rid of a Hecarim, potentially. The Arcane Smash there as well, but we'll see what happens as we hop onto the Rift. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, LGD taking on Gamtee for our first match of Week 11. Death Sense onto Acorn very early on here.
No flash.
And he's most definitely dead, and that is first blood at 57 seconds
that was
here
just
for Gamtee.
Acorn far too aggressive with his positioning. No flash. You have to be even more conservative on Hecarim. Of course, the Teleport and Smite doesn't have the Teleport Ignite that we are used to, at least in the LPL. And now suddenly, we'll see how his jungle follow, or at least his camp start goes, because there's definitely going to be plenty of red wards in this blue side jungle.
The handy thing, most definitely, is the fact that he got his death over and done with very early, so he's not going to exactly miss the spawn times of these camps.
But doesn't have the excuse of Scion. Of course, this death actually with kill
Yes,
credit
true.
to the enemy team. Fantasy lovers everywhere. Sighing in dismay. And the first kill goes over to Lulu, and that's quite the power spike. Lulu's already a lane bully, but double Doran ring start is massive power early for Xiaohu.
Yeah, Xiaohu's definitely going to have control of a lane that he was already going to be a menace, and you had to think, especially up against Wayless, who probably does just want to clear out this wave, make it into a farm fest. But if Xiaohu has sort of the aggressive stance here, and you can see already with the Glitter Lancers, things could be scary here for Wayless.
Yeah, Xiaohu, of course, is going to have a lot of run of this lane, especially early. With double Dorans, you have so much mana regen that you're going to be very comfortable pushing this wave in. God V, or Wayless as we know him more traditionally on this Orianna, needs levels before he's able to start instant clearing waves. So in terms of the mid lane, you expect Wayless to push in Wayless to be pushed in, this wave to be controlled by Xiaohu, and that might open up Huey in particular on Nunu to do some extensive counter jungling.
Yeah, and it looks like they've already started that one, some vertical jungling to come through. We haven't mentioned the fact that there is a lane swap already on this map. Gamtee electing to put their bottom lane in the top side. Sync Dream still hanging out in this brush, and looks like they do actually manage to get the freeze here, I believe, Papa Smithy.
It's a little bit deeper than we're usual to. Usually we expect the Blinium Wave to be a bit closer to the Gamtee turret, but from the extra cast creep, like you said, it's going to be a slow push in to the Gamtee side of the map, and much the same story on the bot. So not much to mention in these 2v0 lanes, and we just have to watch the jungle follow. Have to give the advantage to Hecarim with that smite.
Yeah, and Xiaohu, you go down and give the Rift Scuttler a bit of a cuddle there, but has come back to this mid lane as well, as Wayless is going to hit level 3 first, actually, after the first blood going to Xiaohu. So leaving the lane didn't necessarily give him too much there, but has made it back to that level 3 now. And nice movements there from Orianna. So, I
mean, Orianna, this is the only person in the LPL who's been playing Orianna, even on patch 5.6 after the Athene's changes. Orianna seeing a lot of indirect buffs, with Athene's now being a very viable starting item. Gamtee have jungle followed all the way up to this upper turret, wanted to see if anyone will teleport into lane, but given the vertical jungle, not smart, not safe to do that if you're Acorn and no one to find under the turret.
And was that TBQ? No, that was the vertical jungle coming through, so of course TBQ doesn't manage to get the 3 buff here as well, but it is going to be LGD electing to go for this dragon, trading it for the top outer turret. We've had this discussion so many times, and I'm not entirely sure at this stage what is more important, because of course the global gold is fantastic, and 6% stats doesn't mean too much when you're sitting on Dorans.
I might give a slight edge in this one unique case to Gamtee picking up that first dragon, just because, as you mentioned, overall you definitely take the global gold of an outer turret over a dragon, but when you're a scaling comp, a protect the Jinx comp, getting towards the 5th dragon and denying the 5th dragon, or a route to the 5th dragon to the enemy team, actually has quite a lot of merit. So picking up a first dragon on a team that's looking to push it into the late game with all this peel for the Jinx might not actually work out too bad.
Yeah, well, it would have been great if it was actually Gamtee that picked up the dragon.
My mistake.
Yeah, unfortunately. Mistakes were made this day.
Made.
But of course, dragon going to LGD means that they can sort of use their mid-range comp.
Reverse what I said.
Yeah, sort of the opposite.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Gamtee, still more than happy to try and get things rolling here on this map, make sure that they've got as much money to work with as they can. Already picked up first blood. They've got about a 500 gold advantage here, and that tower very, very low on the top side. Of course, didn't eventually go down, so in the end, I mean, it's just a free dragon for LGD.
Absolutely. At the moment, you give the dragon advantage. Wait to see how they want to control this wave. Because they pushed it so hard, it has reset, so the freeze is back on in top lane. Not getting too much purchase out of the Nunu pick just yet. Just been actually delayed in jungle because the jungle follow was a little bit longer for Huey than it was in the other situation, and mostly a quiet early game.
Yeah, and we've got actually Gragas and Hecarim heading towards this top side now, wanting to protect this outer turret in the top lane. And you think with both of these champions, the Rampage and of course the Cask there as well, they might be able to protect this for the next little while.
We'll have to wait and see how many members stay towards this top. Gragas probably will continue his jungle follow. Let me.
Might be in trouble, but does take a dark passage to safety. The Rend is going to take a whole bunch of his health bar there, and you can see Imp even on farm as far as this lane swap is concerned, but there's a devastating charge. The body slam here as well. The chompers are going to come through. Tail does use his flash, does keep his heal though here as the zap comes through. Let me teleporting through. TBQ does have a red buff that Tail would probably like, but doesn't want to overextend into the horse and Fat Man because they are a dangerous combo.
A smart jungle pathing coming through from TBQ though does force the flash and potentially the end of the lane swap back to standard lanes without a turret going down. That's a massive strategic advantage for LGD, although Godv seems to be caught.
Yeah, Wayless in a little bit of trouble here as well. Gets ignited up after the Wild Growth knockup comes through. There's the answering teleport from, oh my goodness, the flash out of the shockwave there as Godby is going to be safe. TBQ just offering his assistance there, body slamming through past the Gamtee members, and like ships in the night, they pass one another and nothing really happens.
So Gamtee, they were forced to use their teleport first. They were forced to return to standard lanes without picking up an objective, without getting their outer turrets. So still, slight advantage goes to LGD, but LGD had to answering teleport. So the summoners, the global teleports have been answered. The only result is the slightly early rotation with no dragon credit. So the only thing that comes through all of this is the dragon advantage for LGD and the first blood that Gamtee were able to pick up.
Yeah, and Xiaohu has actually translated that to a 21 CS advantage here in the mid lane as well. He's going to go back again now after picking up that Fiendish Codex and maybe grab another item. We'll see whether the idol is going to come through as the next option, but no, it's going to be a null magic mantle. Make sure that he has as much defensive statistics as he can, and that is fantastic against this magic damage jungler and, of course, the Orianna.
With the buffs to Athene's Unholy Grail, I can understand mid laners, looking to pick up their 20% CDR item, starting to move towards Athene's, but in this particular game where you're against a Gragas who's less about damage, it's going to be a much more tankier Gragas with the Cinderhulk, and more about just the sustain. He's so damn hard to kill with the passive that he has, the Happy Hour passive, I believe it's called. That cutting down his healing with the Merlinomicon, I think, is a very relevant statistic. And in terms of magic damage, Lulu probably shouldn't be getting hit by the shockwave, and Grug's damage, as we already mentioned, is fairly negligible. So I would have preferred this snowball idol, like you mentioned, towards a Merlinomicon, but heart set on the Athenes.
Yeah, he's going to be picking up that null magic. Of course, might be going for oh, actually, Fate's Call going to come through here. The Chompers, he does manage to get the knock up onto Tail. His POL heads in there, but not going to find too much. They just bait out the Chompers.
And LGD wanting to go aggressive when they know that Tails flashes down, just looking for whatever they can, whether they can harass him out of lane, get a pick, just go aggressive when you have a window to. And it's a smart communication to know his flash is down. This is the time to be creative and just try and punish him early.
Yeah, and it is definitely sending the message here as well. Imp having that BF sword to the pickaxe here of Tail, which is unfortunate back timing to come through from this Jinx. Of course, forced to there on the top side as Zap is going to help him farm out this wave, but probably wants to be using that for harassment more than anything else. He's going to take the first turret of the game there on the top side of the map that was prepared earlier by the bottom lane members of Gamtee, and the Wolves going to be taken away by Whalers here as well, and the Raptors for Xiaohu.
So opting into this Bami Cinder, obviously into the Cinderhulk item is the Hecarim. This will delay the power spike of the Trinity Force. The burst damage to the backline gets delayed to perhaps the 25-30 minute mark. It's only when that item is complete that I really tip the comp advantage towards LGD, because then they'd be able to get really relevant damage guaranteed onto Tail. It's hard to stop Hecarim from getting on top of the enemy AD carry. But in this situation, it's going to be more focused on laning, going to be more focused about damage reduction with the expected challenging smite pickup from the red jungle enchant. So the Trinity Force delayed, but the early power of Hecarim is definitely going to be higher than if he just had, say, a Phage and the makings of a Sheen.
And the terrifying thing here is the fact that this Gamtee bottom lane getting entirely zoned off this minion wave as well. Not too much help is coming down. Only Zap being used by Tail to farm out this wave. You can see Imp already with a 20 CS advantage here. Death Sentence going to go wide here, trying to predict the Martial Poise, as Imp is able to get a couple of cheeky auto attacks down. Nice Flay going to land there as well. Imp forced to use the flash. Sync Dream getting taken down very low as Huey trying to get in amongst this one, but LGD, they are cool, calm, and collected. They keep everything together and not going to blow anything apart from Imp's flash.
Yeah, a lot of respect shown to the potential perma-CC from the Nunu and Thresh. Has to flash away. Just was too aggressive in his positioning. Going to stand and stay aggressive, though. They're still looking for a pick on Tail. Still about 20 seconds till his flash is available.
Oh, a little bit dangerous here as Imp looking for the Fate's Call. POL going to shield himself up so he doesn't take too much damage from that turret. Everything is going to be fine, though. A nice game sense there by Tail, just to know that something looked a little bit fishy.
Just looked a little bit fishy. There's no pressure on him to pick up the camp as these creep waves meet, so there's no downside. But just hanging back, waiting to see what happens. The greed to pick up that extra 2 CS, it's just not worth it, potentially losing your life while your flash is down.
Yeah, well, it's true. And Gamtee, now they have an opportunity to potentially pick up a dragon for themselves. The bottom lane going back here for LGD means that they're not going to be available for this one. Whalers looking to try and get a ball over here. Does get some vision here of this dragon falling down, but not going to be able to get in range for the dissonance or the shockwave onto this dragon. It is going to get taken down. A little bit of a mistimed smite there, so something could have possibly gone wrong, but not going to be the case, and Gamtee going to even out these dragons.
It always feels like a bonus when against 2 smites, picking up an early dragon, answering the first one that came through from LGD, but you just do so much damage in minigun form as Jinx that it's quite easy to pick up either an unanswered turret or an unanswered dragon. So just with the position in the game, smart movement by Gamtee picks up their first dragon.
Yeah, and also having some very decent warding here as well. Xiaohu protecting himself greatly here with a couple of pink wards. Not too many on the bottom side of the map. You can see PYL definitely having that one under control, which is not going so well here for the Gamtee bottom lane, who have to play very defensively. Have gone back and picked up some extra items, and Imp only got a Vampiric Scepter when that's an extra BF sword now for Tail. So the damage advantage now with the Jinx, you have to think.
And as Kalista, it's only when you hit the 2 item spike that you really are team fight ready, that you're ready to skirmish. The Bloodthirster as a first item is more about safety. It's more about sustain in lane and just working your way towards the Hurricane or the Static Shiver, so we start to see a bit of a resurgence in the single target builds coming through from Kalista. The 1 item spike of the Bloodthirster definitely pales in comparison to Jinx picking up the Infinity Edge, and if she can stay in the melee form, especially, sorry, in the minigun form, you just do so much damage with the natural high attack speed.
Yeah, and even with the fact that, you know, you don't have all that much crit damage anyway, well, critical chance, sorry, anyway, when you do pick up that Infinity Edge. Right now, even with just this Pickaxe BF Sword, this Jinx is definitely very, very relevant. A lot of consistent damage potential. The Sync Dream not going to quite find the death sentence, and Tail with a cheeky rocket into the turret there as well.
Yeah, and of course the attack speed that you naturally get from the minigun is relevant without any other modifiers, and then you have an ultimate that scales off AD, so as you mentioned.
Pretty damn good.
Definitely good in terms of power. You can see Huey just staying in this lane. They want to mow down this turret as fast as possible, and they're even going to rotate Xiao, who's going to get there well before Godv.
Yeah, Descent's not going to land again, but some nice rockets here as well. There's the Monsoon from PYL, but gets himself completely out of position. Fate's Call saves his life as Akon comes in through the backside. Sync Dream with a nice ultimate there to try and get everything out of here. Is Let Me going to get Wild Growth. Akon so incredibly low. Huey somehow manages to survive that one, and I have no idea how no one's dead. As I say it, Let Me going to fall down on the front line, and my goodness, TBQ, I have no idea how they turned that around, but Akon's teleports are always so impressive.
And Akon was by far the first to rotate. That's why they continued to fight. That's why the explosive cast was used, because they knew that Akon would get there a long time before Let Me. And that play from Akon, as you mentioned, the teleport god, always known as the god of rotational play, that's what won them the engage, and they're going to steal away the blue buff as well.
Yeah, they do manage to pick up an objective for it as well. LGD able to capitalize on any small advantage. That was 1 kill in that 5v5 skirmish, and still managing to capitalize with the dragon down and no access to the turret. Beautifully played.
It was the explosive cast I want to single out from TBQ. It's such a high skill capability because you're looking for only displacement in this case. AP Gragas, you can throw it out and rely on the burst damage, but the jungle Gragas, it's all about hitting displacement, bouncing them back in just the right spot. Bounce back Huey. He had to flash defensively. The zone control, the space control that can be put out by Maokai, Thresh, and Nunu was negated by the explosive cast. So credit to the LGD jungler. That's what won them the engage.
Yeah, really beautiful play here as well. PYL with a bit of a hero maneuver there as well into the backside, and didn't even die, of course. With that Fate's Call available, you can make these aggressive Monsoon plays and just get pulled all the way back.
And the Skirmisher Saber now complete. It's the Cinderhulk Skirmisher Saber that we saw Flandre debut last week. So powerful because it has just so many different and relevant statistics. You've got the true damage on auto attackers. Godv, they found a lot of members in mid.
Yeah, some tanky members after him here as well, but that dissonance damage definitely relevant with a blue buff. Not going to be too worried about his low health bar, and he's just going to wander back to the turret. TBQ's here, and turret does fall down, so Gamtee definitely getting the most out of that one, and Wayless is going to head back to base, but has caught up a little bit in this farm, and there is a lot of pressure on this bottom side for LGD.
And I'm just actually continuing to think about the Cinderhulk top laner, specifically Cinderhulk's Hecarim. Why I love it so much is that Hecarim, by far one of the best tanks at diving the backline. The 20% damage reduction, if they can split threats, will be so relevant. That's a long fight. Yeah,
actually, Sync Dream going to fall down immediately here. Huey was trying to get into the backside, but now with a 2v2 with the Jinx low, things not looking so good here for Gamtee. And Imp has always been so impressive on this Kalista, able to get so much damage down. And there's, oh my goodness, the ultimate coming through. Tail going down incredibly low. Huey, he's just trapped under this turret. Not a whole lot he can do. And Akon again in towards this backside. That wasn't a teleport. He just wandered through the jungle.
Wonderful pathing gets them to the engage. That's 3 kills and a turret down for LG. They're going to continue pushing, and Golvi in the mid lane doing just fine and wave clearing against Xiaohu. Xiaohu pushed his advantage very well early, but only getting punished now.
Yeah, there's the wild growth for the knock-up there as well. Twisted Advance coming through as Godby trying to get something down here, but this is a very tanky Maokai, and a small hula hoop not even going to go off as Gamtee. They answer in the mid lane.
That's a much later punishment than I would have expected, given how much early advantage Xiaohu had. They're just going to push out the wave. They cannot pick up any other advantages from that push. They have picked out the outer turret, so it is a 2-to-1 turret advantage, but the kills definitely going the way of LGD.
Yeah, and the team fights as well. They just look so much more coordinated on this map, and see whether that's going to continue or whether Gamtee can get behind Tail, and his positioning, his play is going to be able to carry them through, because with this Protect the Jinx comp, it's all on Tail. And
it's all on Tail, but as a great backline diver like Hecarim, the ability to have 20% reduced damage from the Jinx to you as Hecarim, the ability to challenging smite, take 20% less damage. If you separate Tail away with either the Devastating Charge or the Onslaught of Shadows and then can just duel him in the backline, he's the only damage source on Gamtee who's really going to be teamfight relevant. And I have to feel like the challenging smite junglers, the challenging smite top laners might actually be an indirect way to deal with these Protect the Jinx, Protect the Kog'Maw comps.
Yeah, that might be the answer to the Juggernaut here, Papa Smithy, potentially. The recurve bow now completed for Imp on top of the Bloodthirster as well, with POL also there. That's going to be a lot of shielding here for this Kalista moving towards this mid game as Acorn going to take down the Rift Scuttler. We've got Pink Wards here as well. LGD wanting to pick up this dragon that has just respawned. Gold lead missing on about 1,000 here for LGD, and they're looking to try and extend that with some more statistics here from the second dragon for LGD. Gamtee, though, looking to try and get in position to try and get a potential steal, try and contest something here as Letme trying to find his way into the front. Acorn already taking half of his health as Tail standing on the backside. Oh my goodness, the steal from Huey. There's the absolute zero to come out as well. PYL in an interesting position. Of course, Fate's Call still there if he does get himself in a bit of trouble. There it is coming through as Zhao, who's going to get singled out. Onslaught of Shadows to try and take down the Lulu. There's the shield. In fact, the ultimate there as well. And only Zhao who hit by the old, that is very, very mean there, Wayless as Imp. He's going to pop the heal just to chase after Sync Dream, and Godby picks up yet another one. LGD just took control of that fight, and they split off a member and then use everything to kill them.
But they're already winning team fights, Atlas, without even the Hurricane being completed for Imp. We always talk about the 2-item power spike of Hurricane Bloodthirst, and for them to be winning fights before the Ren sets are possible bodes very poorly for Gamtee. Infinity Edge completed on Tail, but it's not until he hits at minimum a 2-item spike that he's going to be able to compare at all to the Hurricane Bloodthirster Imp.
Going to be very, very frightening. Tail looking to get in here and clear out this bottom wave. Probably sitting on a little bit of gold because, of course, has been sitting on those items for quite some time, but probably not enough to finish off the Phantom Dancer if my mathematics in my brain are correct. And Xiaohu looking to complete this Rabadon's Death Cap very quickly as well. Only needs another 840 gold for that. But we'll see what Wayless decides to pick up here as well. He's very, very good at choosing the right build for the game, and it looks this time like it's going to be Alacrity enchant Sorcerer's Shoes into the Luden's Echo, potentially.
Yeah, the Luden's Echo, that's one of the possibilities. Twin Shadows also builds. Lichbane will be a crazy one, but also could be put out there. True. I'm gonna agree with you and say Luden's Echo. There's a lot of mobility, there's a lot of consistent damage that comes through from Orianna with her low cooldown spells, so I could see you being able to proc it quite well. Of course, she already has excellent wave clear, so the wave clear property is not necessarily going to be relevant, but you could just think of Luden's Echo similar to DFG. It's just another AP scale, another bit of flat magic damage, and just a little bit more burst.
Yeah, I like the Alacrity enchant on top of that as well, just for the added synergy. I mean, you've got Dissonance already, but it's going to be going up to some pretty ridiculous movement speed, already sitting at 425. And when you want to be getting that ball into exactly the right positions, it's pretty relevant.
And on Orianna, you can kind of think of as an early Alacrity enchantment and on Boots too, so that's already a lot of flat movement speed, as almost like a defensive, like a snowball QSS pickup, just because you want to position so defensively in the backline. You're all about consistent damage rather than burst. That staying alive is your big priority in a team fight, and if that extra 20 movement speed is relevant, which it might well be, you don't want to use Dissonance selfishly, you want to use it on an Initiator or maybe on your AD carry, that the movement speed, as you say, might actually be very important early.
Yeah, we'll see whether that is going to work out here for Wayless. Of course, Pretty unique, haven't seen that one just yet, as Imp has completed that 2-item power spike that you were talking about here, as Xiaohu going to take a whole lot of his health. Descent has to be dodged out of the way here, doesn't get the knock up as Sync Dream gets hit by the ultimate. TBQ looking to come through here as Xiaohu very, very large on this Lulu. And Sync Dream heading back through, does manage to grab that Dark Passage out of there. Akon going to get slowed down by the Zap as Imp still being a menace towards this top side. Let Me looking to try and protect this turret as there's a 4v4 potentially about to erupt here in the mid lane. Sync Dream forced to go back though. He's very, very low. Means LGD have an opportunity to get something done here on this map.
I mean, LGD at this point are kind of bluffing aggression. They've just blown 2 of their long cooldown ultimates, both the explosive cask and the shockwave from Orianna. So they're able to bluff aggression, push their wave out. They don't want to eat any attention coming through from Gamtee. A lot of long cooldown ults used there erroneously. Xiaohu thought that Govy would continue to come towards him aggressively to avoid the death sentence, so ulted himself just for the knock-up potential, missed the knock-up. So long AoE cooldowns used, and the result, just a bit more farming.
Yeah, a little bit more to come through here as Godby going to shield himself up while he takes down these creeps. As you can see, still Xiaohu with a slight lead there in the mid, has completed that Rabbidan's death cap as well, and on the side of Gamtee, Let Me does have that Righteous Glory. So a few items have come through. Zeal being picked up with those Berserker's Greaves for Tail as well. So he's starting to get to somewhere a little bit more relevant here. But you have a look over to the 403 Callista in the hands of Imp, and I shudder if I'm a Gamtee fan.
And the next Dragon comes in 1 minute 35. Doesn't look like they want to be contesting it. Let Me's caught, but very tanky.
He actually flash into the Twisted Advance here as well, and LGD are going to back out of the way, so Let Me, nice little play.
And speaking of bluffing, it almost felt with the aggressive flash there was going to be plenty of cavalry coming through to defend it, but nope, just managed to walk away. So Let Me, I commend you. That was very smart use of your flash.
Yeah, and with all of the Gamtee members, of course, off screen as well, LGD forced to respect it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the little mind games you can play when you don't have complete vision. Of course, if LGD had overwatered this top jungle, wouldn't have been as successful, but in this one situation, it looked crazy, but it was very effective.
Yeah, working out quite nicely. Imp and PYL continue to have 100% kill participation in this game, as it's all been about this bottom lane side skirmish mode that's been happening here. Descent's going to land on the TBQ, but you have to think he's probably going to be okay. Very, very high health bar here with the Cinder Hulk. And now, of course, that Glacial Shroud and the Giant spell completed. This is a very tanky Gragas who's just playing up in that front line, just saying, yeah, hit me with stuff, I don't care.
And you just have to wonder, will Gamtee try and stop this third dragon coming through from LGD? Actually, sorry, it's Gamtee that have the dragons. I need to keep on top of the dragons this game.
Well, that was a clever steal by Huey.
Opting into dragon fights against a Callista who's got basically their mid-game core going down is going to be very risky. But the other kind of issue for Gamtee is that their late game really only begins when Tail hits 3 items. They're going to try and counter a dragon with a Baron. There's no vision whatsoever here. Jinx mows down the Baron, and this could be an unanswered Baron steal.
Yeah, and Huey, of course, has that consume available. No one on their way over here. Gamtee just going to pick up a free Baron. No worries.
24 minutes, no wars down. PYL finally gets a ward and is going to be very disappointed to find that Gamtee, what an excellent strategic rotation.
Yeah, of course. Sweeping it out, they know that no one's there, and they might even be able to get down in time to pick up this dragon as well. Of course, Empowered Recall going to get them back to base a little bit quicker. Static Shiv now completed. Spirit Visage completed as well from Let Me. I mean, this dragon is going to go down very, very quickly.
But what a depressing trade. Yeah. A Baron for a second dragon is never a trade you want to opt into. No. They got the absolute minimum there, did LGD. And as you mentioned, the item timings for Gamtee, suddenly, team fights are looking pretty good to opt into.
Oh, yeah, especially when they now have that 6th man of the Baroned up minions as well coming down here. And they might be able to siege out this turret. And Jinx, fantastic at sieging with that rocket form of me. You can just stand very, very far back and shoot that turret, although Tail deciding not to at this stage.
It's just hanging back, so respecting all the displacement. I mean, you can get really psyched out as an AD carry against just one of Gragas and Hecarim, but with 2 available, you need excellent flank wars. And speaking of flanks,
yeah, Akon actually looking to head through the back here. There's the Skirmisher onto Tail as well, who just gets destroyed by that Shockwave as Godby comes around the backside. Him going to take down Sync Dream. Huey now taking a whole lot of damage. Look at him all the way in the middle of this fight. The double kill already, but Super Mega Death Rocket tears apart the team of LGD. Xiaohu now going to get punished for whatever he did to LGD in a past life. As Let Me just going to wander into the team and say, oh man, this is looking worrisome. And what a beautiful fight from LGD when it looked like Akon was just suiciding into 5 people.
But an amazing return to form for 2014 World Champion Imp. Wonderful Kalista mechanics. Was one of the first Kalistas to come out in the LPL. I wasn't convinced by it then, but I am now. 7-0 and 5. We're going to see the replay coming through. Just watch and track Imp during this fight. It looks like Acorn's bit off more than he can chew. He does use that challenging smite. Is taking less damage from Tail, who's relatively healthy, but flashes over into the cove. The 4-man shockwave doesn't do a lot of damage at this point, but it's all about Imp. Has that early game core with the Bloodthirster and the Hurricane. First kill comes down. You know the Ren sets are going to continue. Can go in so aggressively in the front line. Then the Flash buys distance. Use the Fate's Call for even more CC onto the back line. Imp, take a bow, because you've just done a wonderful team fight for LGD.
That was absolutely stunning, and it wasn't just Imp, it was all of the displacement like you were talking about being used perfectly, and it just allows this Kalista to bounce around the fight with reckless abandon.
And whenever you're the AD carrying to protect the comp, you're always trying to look at the cooldowns you have to respect on the enemy team. When you're talking about a potential flanking home guard Hecarim, when you're talking about the Gragas explosive cask, hell, they're even using Fate's Call aggressively on the Janna for another knock-up. There's so many things to respect if you're Tail. Man, team fighting's harder now with Flash unavailable. You almost feel like if you're Gamtee, you can only really take fights when Flash is available.
Yeah, and Acorn almost has his Trinity Force completed as well. That was nowhere near done before when he was doing massive damage to Tail there in the front line and tanking up everything that Gamtee had to offer. Of course, that Cinderhulk definitely working out. There's the Trinity Force completed. And LGD just looking absolutely unstoppable this game. 8,000 gold now in the lead, even on Dragons, of course, even on turrets as well. But these kills definitely working out now for LGD, and it's just how they're orchestrating these team fights. It's just looking completely unbeatable for Gamtee.
I mean, the one consistent thing this game, Atlas, has been the teleport usage from Acorn. Has been absolutely spot on. Once again, it looked like he was being overly aggressive, but they knew that if they were able to get the burst onto Tail, if they were able to force him to use his flash defensively, it's easy to clean up kills when you're Imp fighting in the front lines. Look at these items on Imp. You talk about early game core, mid game core. That's almost a late game build. As we're seeing Acorn and Let Me Trade, you have to give the advantage to Acorn, and forces the defensive teleport.
Yeah, devastating charge. Not going to be there just yet to break that one out, as Acorn is going to at least let Me escape this time around. But that's a huge cooldown now down for Let Me, and that's almost worth a death, you have to think, just because now LGD just have the ability to move around this map wherever they want. No split push going to be coming through from Let Me for the next 5 minutes.
And you have to, as Gamtee, you need to start really being on top of pink warding your flanks, stopping rotations like this one coming through if you're going to be aggressive, just because it's all about the Hecarim, challenging Smite instantly on the Jinx, trying to separate her from threats. And in this time, when you don't have Flash available, you have to be so defensive as Tail and Gamtee in general. They're so gated around the power of their AD carry that the rotations from LGD, they're coming up strong.
They certainly are. And I mean, you look over at Imp here, he's got about 65 CS in the lead, 705 to 021. Just the amount of extra money that this AD carry has is unbelievable.
I'll throw in a bilge water just because, you know, got 1,400 gold burning a hole in your pocket.
He just wants more buttons to press, Papa Smithy. His own little slow there before the render come through. Not too bad as Xiaohu going to try his best to clear out this wave. Baron going to be available in another minute and a half. Of course, before that, we are going to have the Dragon here as well as the third opportunity for both of these teams to pick that one up. The extra movement speed probably going to be working out very, very well here, as it was, in fact, Wayless picking up the Rabadon's Death Cap before a potential Luden's Echo, or, of course, you know, Twin Shadows or Lichbane, whatever he decides to go with. This is Wayless, of course.
Absolutely. Just looking for the early move speed, I guess, to combine with the flat move speed from his Alacrity purchase. Imp, the one thing you can say about Kalista is not going to get much stronger than he already is, which is a terrifying thing given how he's ripped through teams. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel, but maybe not for Syncturing.
Yeah, look at this damage. It's absolutely ridiculous. Is Imp actually going to use his QSS a little bit creatively there? I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to get rid of. Was that actually a death sentence that came through? Because I'm not entirely sure whether I saw one, but Huey hanging around by the side here, but the inner turret is going to fall down, and Imp is just roaming around this map, taking objectives where he sees fit.
Yeah, I think it was definitely the Ignite, but it might have also been the Death Sentence. Just wants to keep healthy. Does Imp top himself off? At this point, if you want to contest for objectives, if you're Gamtee, I'm not really sure how you can do it. Look at this mini-map, littered with defensive wards, almost exclusive vision around the Dragon and Baron, barring one red wall that's hanging out towards the left. And Imp dancing a little bit, waiting for the spawn of the Dragon. Third Dragon, more movement speed. Suddenly, Kalista gets safer.
Yeah, Callista gets safer. Wayless gets potentially more damage availability on his QS.
And speaking of damage, what about that Hecarim?
Oh my goodness. He does have now a Spectre's Cowl as well, so not only does he have the Trinity Force, but he also has a lot more defensive statistics. And yeah, exactly. He scales with the movement speed.
Yeah, 5% more movement speed is very relevant to Tail because that's going to be more devastating charge damage in the backline of a fight.
Yeah.
Things looking excellent for LGD, and I got to say, this is definitely a different LGD than the Misfortune, Ash, Cassidy comps we were seeing last weekend. They've come here to play, and Gamtee desperately needing a 2-0 just to have even their faint dreams of making it to the playoffs alive. Doesn't look like they're going to get much from this game, just with how impressive LGD have been playing.
Yeah, just been playing beautifully here as well. And after a difficult beginning, as PYL might have got caught, flashes into range for that one. As Super Mega Death Rocket not going to quite find PYL, who actually just opted to go over the wall there with the Fate's Call by Imp.
Flash Fate's Call is so much disengaged potential.
But that's also two different people having to press their buttons. It's beautiful communication coming through from PYL.
Oh,
and
boy.
Imp here is Tail. He's trying to face off against Imp, or is he? He's sort of just wandering around, using his heal for fun and then dying.
There was never any thought of face-off. He got one auto attack in as 2 attack speed minigun jinx because he was like, I'm dead. And he was really dead.
Really dead is precisely what was happening here. Body slam onto Huey here as well as TBQ looking to fight this one out. Sync Dream just getting torn apart. Look at the clockwork wind up working wonders here for Wayless. Wow. There's the onslaught of shadows onto Huey. They wanted that little Yeti dead.
But they're so good at using these displacement effects and chaining them together without overly using cooldowns. I mean, maybe this is just the reality of a practice LPL team, but LGD, we talked about the value of momentum. They're really living on adrenaline this game with so much momentum.
Oh yeah, PYL actually taking a lot of damage from Xiaohu while the rest of his team's taking down this Baron. Acorn finding a flank here as well as Twisted Advance comes through, but look at all the healing coming through. My goodness, this horse is amazing. The Whimsy Shield going to do some work here as Acorn going to get polymorphed as well. POL relatively low, but the Baron went down in amongst all of that. And Acorn took half of his health for it and tanked the members of Gamtee forever.
He's the highest level in the game. Don't always find this experience. Let me's caught. Very, very tanky.
Yeah, Imp just looking to try and pick that one up. Nice Dark Passage to save him from that one. Sync Dream going to get his friend out of that fight as Imp looking to try and continue the siege. Going to tank up the turret a little bit, and that is very dangerous. Of course, 60% slow. Not something you really want to opt into as an AD carry, but he continues to do so.
Imp does not respect this Gamtee damage at all. We already saw him flash over a cove to get the solo kill on Tail. Still doesn't have flash available, but nobody told him.
Yeah, nobody told TBQ either. He's just throwing out barrels left, right, and center. They do take down the inhibitor, and that is going to be enough for LGD for now.
I mean, they've got everything this game, Atlas. 2 Barons have gone down. 1 to Gamtee, who didn't manage to make great use of it. The second one goes down to LGD. They've got the 3 dragons. They don't necessarily have an obvious win condition like the Baron, like the dragon buff especially. Still 10 minutes away from the second dragon, but they're winning every fight, and Tail just has to respect so many threats that the result is just him not putting out the damage his team needs in a 1 damage lineup.
Yeah, and then you look over at Immortal Legendary Imp. Just absolutely terrifying. Luden's Echo has been completed, Papa Smithy.
I saw it. It didn't do much in the fight, but it's there.
It certainly is there, and I think Wayless just really likes needlessly large rod items. He's got another one here as Imp has actually been discovered by 3 members here as well, but he's going back up to full health. Fate's Call as well for some extra CC there in the backline. Tail turns up as well as the Ren comes through for a lot of damage. He's going to be the focus first because he's so difficult to kill just in general. Tail does manage to take down PYL. Imp still alive in this one. Somehow survives, and TBQ makes his way towards the backside. Zap going to come through and stop the Fat Man from getting there as Imp's going to take down Huey as well. Sync Dream spends most of his life here on barely any health. TBQ wishes he was old Gragas because that may have actually killed the Thresh there as Imp just continues his pursuit but gets slowed down to high heaven from the Zap. TBQ eventually takes down Sync Dream, but Acorn in the backline, my goodness, Xiaohu's just going to get rendered to death, and Imp now turns his attention to the Nexus turrets. Legendary once more. And LGD, what a dominating performance.
The chorus of legendaries rings out in stereo. Atlas always being reminded as Acorn also no slouch himself. LGD, what an impressive performance. Sticking with the meta champions, obviously taking this game seriously. And with a performance like that, the 5 teams above them in the standings are going to be looking over their shoulders because LGD, week 11, they've come to play.
Yeah, and there are a few teams now that have just really pulled out all of the stops in these final weeks of the LPL, really looking devastating on the Rift. And I have to say, I am so impressed by Wayless's Orianna, but Imp, when he's been seeing Deft going off here in China, you have to think that there's some rivalry there, really wanting to get up there, and that was some phenomenal Kalista play.
And look, if you're going to mention Orianna and the Kalista in particular, I think we have to have apologies to Hecarim. That rotational play from Akon, that's why he is the starting top laner for this team over the much vaunted solo specialist Flame. The rotations were wonderful to see this game. The Hecarim so much more potent than a potential Rumble. That last second change, I mean, going for that Smite teleport, the challenging Smite on Jinx just couldn't deal with the Hecarim burst damage, let alone the fact that she was doing 20% less damage to that diving frontline tank.
Yeah, and when you've got someone that good at using their teleport here as well, Gamtee taking this sort of late game reliant team comp in, we'll see whether they change that idea up because, of course, it just looks like LGD's ability to team fight in any stage of the game is just too difficult for them to deal with. Well, we'll see what Gamtee do as we move into Game 2 between our first matchup of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Do not go anywhere.